welcome to the new episode of the Broker Collective. I know a lot of you have been waiting for this one as we are joined by a very special guest. But before we come to him, let's say hello to the two other members of the collective who have been here since day one. We start with Jamie Demora Lennox. Hi, Jamie.
Hello, hello, hello.
And Lewis Trawlerman Shaw.
You all right, fellas? How are you all getting on?
Living the dream, Lewis. We are living the dream. You
Yeah,
may
what a week to
note
live that
some
dream.
sarcasm in my voice. And Lewis, I'm going to ask you, once you've finished swigging your fizzy water, to introduce our very special guest who's taken time out of his diary to join us today, please.
Yeah, of course. So we're very delighted to welcome Charlie Lambdin from Moving Home with Charlie fame, who's big on YouTube, Twitter, TikTok. Any other platforms I've missed there, Charlie?
Instagram, Twitch,
Instagram,
Facebook, LinkedIn.
So across all the social platforms. So Charlie is very vocal and a big champion of buyers, and also he's an advocate for good estate agency and a critic of poor estate agency. He's been growing on social media for how long is it now? 2-3 years?
It's 3 years, almost exactly. It was 3 years. 3 years. I began the channels. I knew nothing was much going to happen to begin with, and it's amazing. Do you know something? What I think about growing a social media following is that it is equal parts, 50-50, how much your audience cares about what you're talking about. And I choose my words carefully, how much they care about what you're talking about, right? Number one. And the other 50% is luck, pure luck. You know, when I look at the videos of mine that caught a wave, there was no clue. The first video on the Moving Home with Charlie channel went viral when I only had 200 subscribers. Was one where I literally said to my other half, we're about to go out for a walk on a Saturday. I went, just give me a minute. And I stuck my phone on and I went blah, blah, blah at my phone for about 8 minutes and then just uploaded it without editing it and forgot about it. Pop, 100,000 views. And my channel went to 1,000 subscribers within a few days and it just didn't look back after that. But I could never have planned it. And I don't think I'd ever put less effort into any of my videos than that one. And it's so easy to spend lots of time thinking and preparing and But what I've learned, if anything, from all the videos that I've done, is that people just want to trust what they're hearing. They just want to know that you believe what you're saying. It doesn't matter if they agree with you or not, as long as they believe that what you're saying is what you really believe in and what you really think. And it's audiences are collectively, an audience as a single organism can sniff bullshit out a mile away. From the other side of the world, they know instantly. Honestly, an audience is the best bullshit radar of all. And they call you on it. If they even suspect it, they call you on it. And it's really good. So to anyone watching this who's trying to grow a channel, I would just say, never try. And of course, there's that grey line where you think you're not being dishonest, but you're kind of spinning things a bit. They honestly, they just see it a mile away.
Charlie, one thing you'll learn about us in this podcast is there is no scripting, and all we know how to do is be our authentic self. So I think we'll use that and go through the items that we are going to cover today. So we are going to start with a brief description about the Broker Collective for those of you who are just joining and listening in for the first time. The Broker Collective started as a movement by myself, Jamie and Trawlerman Shaw around some interesting times that we were having around with rates increasing very quickly, and we decided to come together to start the Broker Collective podcast. We are all financial services professionals and we are involved with the mortgage and property finance market. Here on this channel, you will hear the unfiltered truth of what it's like to do our jobs, what we're seeing in the market versus what you may be hearing from other outlets or platforms. So let's start by talking about the state of the market and the economy. Mortgage lenders have been moving, a lot of them, to increase rates within the last few weeks, purely off the back of rising SONIA swap rates. The initial cuts that we had in the earlier part of the year, some of them seem to be reversed. And that is purely off the back of the expectation of where everybody thinks this market is going. Now, I'm going to start with you, Charlie, if I may. Obviously, as well as you're very vocal about the property market and where it's heading and everything like that, I'm going to give you a very easy question to answer. What do you think is going to happen to interest rates?
What do I think is going to happen to the Bank of England base rate, or what I think?
Correct. Yes. Okay. Sorry, Bank of England base rate.
Because there's a separate. They're different, aren't they? Well, until this week, until I saw the US GDP and inflation figures that came out this week, I was guessing, and there's too much uncertainty around the world, both nationally and internationally. There's too much uncertainty for anyone to know what's going to happen, right? Anyone who says they know what's going to happen is just full of shit. You can't possibly know without knowing what's going to happen in the global conflicts, without knowing what's going to happen in the elections, without knowing what's going to happen with unexpected weather events and all other kind of. No one can know, right? But my best guess was, and it wasn't what I wanted, and I said this a couple of months ago, that I think we might get one 25 basic point cut to the base rate this year. And everyone laughed and went, no, Charlie, the market's priced in 3 or 4 cuts. And I don't care. The market's often wrong. That's what I think. I could be wrong. I'm not confident. This week, that's now changed. I now don't think we're going to get any cuts this year. And I think we might even see a hike. And,
really?
Yeah.
None whatsoever?
Because, and here is, I mean, my confidence level here is low. I mean, I'm not saying this is definitely going to happen, but this is my best guess right now, because what just came out on the US figures is that they've got the worst of both worlds. They've got rising inflation and falling growth, stagflation. So if it continues that way, so the American, I'll explain why it matters. What happened in America matters here. That is a horrible catch-22. Which leaves them in the position where they may well have to raise rates. They've even started mentioning that it's not impossible. You know, they're very, very gentle how they feed into the conversation. Now, the Bank of England, it is my opinion, disregard my opinion by all means, that the Bank of England is very, very closely tied. It's almost like with a piece of very stiff elastic. It's got a slight bit of movement that it can do away from what the Fed does, but not much, because if the Bank of England base rate doesn't stay where it is in relation to the US rate, if the US rate goes up and we don't go up, or if the Bank of England rate cuts and America doesn't, that is inflationary for the UK economy because of what it does to the foreign exchange rate and the cost of imports. So and that's one argument. There's another one, which is a political argument to do with the whole globalist movement, that they're actually all working in lockstep together. So that's why I no longer have the expectation of the one rate cut that I had, and this is new. This is a new point of view for me just this week, and I think that people should be prepared for the possibility of a further increase in rates. I'm not expecting it, but it will no longer be a surprise to me if it happens.
See, Charlie, the conversations that we have with clients, obviously, as you can expect, whenever we're talking to people about mortgage options, the topic always comes out as what's going to happen to interest rates, where are they going? Now, as you said at the beginning of the year, there was a lot of talk about potentially even up to 6 or 7 rate cuts in 2024, I remember hearing, and that seems to have fallen by the wayside, and the expectation of when and if we do get cuts seems to be moving further towards the end of the year. However, Andrew Bailey did recently say, I believe, at the IMF, that he feels that our economy is more, and what's happening is more in line to what's happening in Europe versus the US. Do you think there's a chance that we could follow Europe as opposed to moving more strictly in line with the Fed as a glimmering hope?
I mean, I think glimmering hope, there is a tiny glimmer of hope that could happen, but I don't think so, no. The US economy is definitely sort of one of the most powerful ones in the Western world at the moment. Everything else is kind of in its wake. So even if the ECB were to cut its rates, that might slightly improve the chances of us having a cut. But, I think everybody should completely ignore everything Andrew Bailey says. Now, that's a bold statement. He's the governor of Bank of England, Charlie. You can't ignore what he says. He is so tightly constrained on what he can say and what he can't say. If you look back at everything he said and everything that's happened, he just sits on the fence with a hint this way and a hint that way. And, a single word comes out of his mouth and it makes headlines the next day. And the headlines twist what he said into, oh, look, he's confirmed it. They're definitely going to slash rates back down to 2%. I'm exaggerating, of course, but people seize on anything he says. And I just think that he has little more access to what's going to happen than anybody else does, right? Everyone who works in the financial markets has as much access to the economic data as he does, pretty much. Okay? He doesn't know stuff that the investment markets don't know. If anything, it's the other way around. So he's got a job to do. I think it's a pretty, we can argue about whether he's done it well or not. I think it's a pretty thankless job. It's a job I wouldn't want, because it's a job, whatever you do, you're going to piss somebody off. Right? Whatever you do. So I honestly think that for people who want to work out whether, if it's brokers or if it's clients of brokers, the only thing that anyone can say is you've got to make your own mind up based on what we know are the input factors. And you've got to stop. I think if I had a message to mortgage brokers watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, it would be, don't ever let yourself say again to a client, everyone says or everyone thinks. That should never be the basis of a decision, because everyone is wrong as often as anyone is wrong, right? The consensus is frequently wrong. And if you just go with the consensus and you go with the flock, and it goes bad, was it a good decision? I think that, and of course you've got clients at different areas, you've got clients at different budgets, different parts of the country, different stages of life. And I think that the best thing a broker can do for a client is maybe guide the client into formulating their own view. So when a client says to a broker, what do you think is going to happen to rates? Say, well, it's interesting because it depends. Some people say it depends on what happens in America. Some people say it's what happens in Europe. Some people say it's what happens with inflation. And actually, some people say it's the WEF agenda. And who knows? But you got to form your own view. But I think the wisest piece of advice to anyone is you cannot make your decisions based on what, quotes, everyone thinks. Who is everyone?
I think that's a very, very valid point. And all of us agree that we need to work harder, not just ourselves, but as an industry, to educate our clients more about what goes into decisions and the variable factors that lead into them. Lewis, I know you have this conversation regularly with your clients as well, don't you?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and in terms of I try to steer away from conversations about macroeconomics and stuff like that. But everyone wants to talk about it, and I try and steer away from it and go, no, forget that. Think about the human level. Can you afford this or not? It's a yes or no answer. It's very binary. Are you, do you plan, everything else being equal, on being here for X amount of time? Yes or no? And say, look, we don't know what's going to happen with this, so don't let that be the driving factor. But the driving factor should be your life plan. It's an interesting thing that we, as brokers, it's very, very easy to fall into this very short-term type of view with customers because they want this house and they want this mortgage now, and they've got and humans, I've said this numerous times, people are very, very bad at forward thinking, because we always assume it's like that kind of optimism bias, all that kind of stuff. We always assume it's going to be better in the future. But why? I mean, imagine if you were born in 1900. You've just, you get to 18, well, you get to 14 rather, and you see the Great War, the worst kind of, atrocity that humanity has seen in the modern world, thinking, well, the future's going to be better, and then you see a pandemic, and then a few years later, when you're into your early 20s, you see a huge stock market crash, and everyone's over half of all mortgage debts in default, and then you think, oh well, it's going to get better now, and then you see the Second World War. Do you know what I mean? So, people often have this kind of blinker view. I want this house, this mortgage now, and you have to try and get them out of that. I go, hang on a minute, you're 30, and you're talking about taking out a 35-year mortgage that's going to take you to 65. Forget what interest rates are doing now, because this is a much longer time horizon than that, and you have to kind of try and prize those blinkers off, and it's really, really difficult. I find it difficult because people are so focused on the now that they forget the future, and actually, that's far more important, I think, personally.
I've got a very short.
Jamie,
can I just add something to that? I think that the discussion about interest rates is to brokers what the discussion about house prices is to estate agents. It's the questions that the consumer asks because they don't know what else to ask. How much is my house worth? That's not really the question you should be asking of an agent. The question that anyone should ask of an agent is, what do you do that other agents don't? That means you'll get me a better price for my house sooner. That's what I want to. I want to hear how you're going to do that, right? The market will pay what the market pays. How do you get the best out of the market? And I think the same thing. I try and educate my followers about the importance of brokers. It's nothing to do with what the interest rates are doing or finding a cheaper deal. That's not the point at all. It's about the personalization of, let's look at this enormous array of products on offer and do the very careful linking up all these different things to all the different products that's the perfect match for your situation in life and your future choices and expectations and things you want to hedge against. It's nothing to do with the rates. And you may often end up going with something that isn't the lowest rate, but is the best product because it's got other factors in there. And so I just think that the brokers, in the same way that I don't think agents should engage movers in conversations about house price guessing, I don't think it's actually helpful for brokers to engage movers in the conversation about what interest rates may or may not do, because Lewis is right.
Well, I agree with what you're saying. This market is in limbo at the moment, in my opinion, and a lot of people are still sitting on their hands if they want to do anything, and they're using the rate card and the rate question purely as a thing. Even us trying to get deals over the line or trying to motivate people sometimes to get moving on things, it's very much, well, we don't know what's happening. Let's wait and see. Our deals are coming up in the in the future. We're not sure what's happening. Jamie, bringing you in here, how do you think that we can better educate our clients and our audience individually and also as a broker community so they're able to make more informed decisions?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's going to be around just not overhyping swings of rates. We see it all the time where brokers, rates are falling, let's capitalize and let's get more people interested in buying houses. But just as quickly as they come down, we see them go back up, if quicker, if not quicker. So I think it's more about, again, pretty much what Lewis said is, if the buying a house is right for you, and probably what you say as well, Charlie, if it's now right for you and it's the right house at the right price and it's affordable, do it. If not, stop trying to square peg into a round hole just because you think these conditions could be right. I think more around that it needs to be done. And again, pretty much every single video I ever do is warning, grab a rate now. If you can grab a rate, get it. If it comes down, we'll change it. If not, then at least you secured something. I've been banging on about this back since January when they went down. And guess what? There was people sitting on their hands going, rates will come down further, rates will come down further. And guess what? They've all been coming up the woodwork this month because it's starting shooting up further and they all want deals yesterday. So it's brokers, just education. That 90% of this job is not even researching mortgages anymore. It's talking to clients about their situation and educating on what if scenarios. And this could happen. What would happen if your payments would go to this? So that's where most of the job's done. And people need to see it less transactional as a job and more actual educating and actually properly advising the client in front of them on their circumstances.
Charlie, if you're in our industry and you're dealing and you're having conversations with people, how would you handle the situation of the level of information that you give to people, because again, Lewis will talk about, and I fully agree with him, we always talk to budget. So regardless of what's happening in the market, it's pretty irrelevant. If you can afford the package that's in front of you, then happy days. I'm very much also of the belief that we can also educate people, not just on the market themselves, but also, you know, you're talking about, you're recommending people speak to brokers, the value that we can add to a client and their transactions as well. If you were running a financial services business, what would you do?
The short answer to that question is, I would probably say to clients, 5 years from now, what will you wish you'd done? You know, you may or may not have kids that you didn't plan to have. You may or may not still be married. You may or may not still be single, right? The economy may or may not. What will you wish you'd done? And of course, Lewis said it, right? People don't think ahead. They just don't look at the next step around the corner. And I find personally, in all aspects of life, when I'm facing a big decision, whenever I ask myself, what will I wish I'd done? Usually, the sensible answer presents itself. You know, because a buyer who's only focused on the lowest possible mortgage repayment is making a mistake. Like, almost certainly making a mistake.
Do you know how many times we get that question? What's the lowest rate? What's the lowest rate?
Yeah,
and that's it. That's the inquiry starts with, what's the lowest rate? Yeah.
It's like someone saying, it's like someone holding up something. I don't know what to ask. I don't know what to ask. I'm just assuming that it's like everything else I buy. I just want to get the cheapest. And you know, there's such a long list of considerations that they've got to think through. Like, well, okay, if this happens, what will you wish you'd done? If that happens, what will you wish you'd done? What do you think is going to happen with your money in the future? Like, you know, I mean, you guys must see it so much. You must see people really regretting their decisions at a later point in life, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, and going, what did I do? I was like, oh no, that was a terrible decision. And actually looking back now, it's really, it's like people who go for cheap anything. When it, like, I'm all for being, for economizing and being careful with your money, but I think people should be careful with what's routine outgoings, fuel, heating, like bills, you know, the everyday. But when it comes to a one-off transaction where you need professional advice or professional services like a conveyancer or like, going cheap with any of those services is frankly just stupid. It's just stupid. It's like, this is, in the context of your overall life, this transaction is as important as surgery on your body. Are you going to go to the cheapest place in the world for surgery on your body? Or is that something you're going to splash out on to make sure it's done right? And of course, it's not that first-time movers are, it's not a stupidity problem, it's an ignorance problem. It's they're unaware of the pitfalls. You know, later in life, they've learned the hard way. Like, okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again. And yes, you try and tell them, but they just don't know any different. Oh, I don't understand anything other than cheap, so I'm just going to go cheap. And you know, I've actually met people in person. I've explained stuff, and they're going to go. I explain, for example, the choice of a conveyancer, and you explain it out, and they still go, "Yeah, I think I'm still going to go with the cheap one."
And they question why their transactions taking so long. Yeah.
Right? You know, you're warning them that they're going to get a punch in the face, and if you do that, very good chance you're going to get punched in the face. Okay, I'm going to go that way anyway because it's cheapest. Oh, right. And then they complain they got punched in the face. Well, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, maybe you weren't going to get punched in the face, but the chances were that you know, metaphorically speaking, of course, that this was going to turn around and bite you. And I don't know how you help those people.
But also, we have this conversation with ourselves because, again, we all run our own financial services companies. We're all very much into trying to digitize the process, automate, create efficiencies, help the client's journeys. Do you think, Jamie, I know you're very passionate about this as well. Do you think that you mentioned the value of advice. We do see a lot of, you know, other companies come out and promote, you can do everything digitally yourself, and we're going to sit in the back and give you the infrastructure there. Do you think AI is going to have a big impact on people taking financial advice, you know, personally, rather than just trying to use a completed completely automated system or a decision tree system to give them the cheapest possible outcome.
Is that to me or Jamie?
Jamie, you can add some sauce on that, and we'll throw it over to Charlie.
Yeah, I think that consumers don't know what they don't know. So there'll be ones where they think, oh, especially we talked about it in the last episode, this next generation's become more isolated, less engaging in contact with people. So online is going to be a preferred route on there as well. And it's not going to be the complete answer. But what I think we will see is more people think, oh, I can try and do this myself, or there's information that AI can tell me. And that will suit a certain demographic of people, being basic salary, no debt, clean credit scoring. And that's probably the limits it's probably got at the moment in time. It'll evolve over time on there as well. But there'll come times when it makes mistakes, it drops the ball, clients are getting halfway down the transaction and they think this is absolute hell what I'm going through. And then maybe on the next transactions, they engage with a broker on there as well. So I always see everything as you're not always going to win a customer first time round when you deal with them. But if you do the right advice, the right job, even if they choose to go direct to their bank or to do a PT online, they'll recommend you, they'll come back to you regardless of the outcome of whether you've got business from them at the end of the day as well. So I think there may be a lot of mistakes made in the process, but I think people will still get advice when they actually need it at the end of the day, once they learn from the mistakes.
See, Charlie, throwing that over to you, I'm going to move on to our next topic, which is going to be house prices. And adding towards what Jamie's just said, that same argument's happened in your field and in your area as well, hasn't it? That, the estate agent digital only model is going to come through and take away business from the face-to-face high street estate agent. How do you think AI is going to influence this market positively or negatively?
Well, I'm actually more qualified to answer that question than you might realize, because my entry into this industry was with one of the first ever attempts to disintermediate estate agents completely. In 2000, I was like, the internet's here. Don't need agents anymore. Just upload everything online and the buyers are going to come and find it, right? I kind of did what Purple Bricks did, but 10 years earlier. And I learned very quickly, the hard way, I really did learn actually what it is that estate agents do. And what estate agents do is they handle characters, egos, personality, stress. Nothing to do with the property. The property's not the job. And if you think about it, property doesn't move, people move. They don't sell houses, they move people. Agents move people. Agents deal with people. All they do is deal with people, and they're dealing with people in an emotive state. You tell me if you can think of a single person who, when they're feeling emotive and worried, would like to deal with an AI. Right?
Very good point. Very good point.
So, people buying and or selling or both houses are very worried. It's a gauntlet of uncertainty. Even when it goes well, you've got several months of complete uncertainty. Will this transaction complete? What if it doesn't? What if it does? Where do the kids go? What about my job? Like, AI can't help with any of that shit. Okay? And first of all, can I also add, AI does not yet exist. What you are talking about is machine learning, where they just use logarithms and algorithms to work out the most likely thing to do, right? It's not actually intelligent. It doesn't listen and consider. It processes the question or the request and algorithm answer. There's nothing intelligent about it. It's just more efficient programming at this point. When AI finally arrives, you'll know. We will know, right? It will be. It's a bit like when cloud computers. People started talking about cloud computing, they didn't understand what it was, and they weren't using it. It's a much smaller thing back then. But AI isn't quite yet here. When it is here, the world will change in a way nobody can imagine forever. I do think it will happen. I don't think it will happen as soon as everyone thinks. Is there technology out there replacing people's jobs now? Yes. That's been happening for decades. It's been happening for decades. Technology has always replaced people's jobs. Always. For hundreds of years it's done that, right? Machines do the work. Machines do the work. And as more of our work has become, like, rather than manual work, it's thinking work, Well, machines can do that. I mean, 10 years ago, there were computer programs that could do what a junior lawyer does more reliably than a junior lawyer does it 24 hours a day. Right? They simply measured it. Like they would give it a 10,000 word document and say, go through this and find the problems with it. And the machines were doing better than the humans years ago. So people are calling it AI, and they shouldn't. It's a lazy, sloppy term used to describe something that's actually just advancing technology. Actual intelligence requires feeling. And whether they can simulate feeling in a machine, they'll be able to mimic it perhaps and fake it. But will you ever get a machine to react with emotion? Actual emotion? I don't know.
Charlie, we've been trying to get Lewis to react with emotion for the last 2 years, haven't we, Jamie? You know what, Charlie, what you said, that's very interesting. I follow a real estate agent in the States called Ryan Serhant, and I just love some of the stuff that he comes out with. And one thing that he always talks about, which is very pertinent to what you just said, is he talks about the commitment to the deal. So even us, and Lewis, I'm going to bring Lewis in a minute, the amount of times that I get involved with things that have got nothing to do with arranging property finance, but it helps get the deal across the line, which, you know, we don't get paid for, but we get, you know, we're paid according to the deal. That's where the value add comes. And I completely agree with what you've said. With any level of, you know, current technology that we had, no one's going to be able to have that commitment towards holding each side of the transaction. Now, Charlie, the market hasn't moved at the moment. And I say to all of these guys and other brokers within our community, you wait when this market starts moving, whether it's in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months or whatever, you're going to see the need moreover to try and keep deals together. Lewis, what do you do to try and keep deals together?
Drink heavily,
Apart
shout,
from that.
ring you two on Sunday mornings, video calls, naked in bed. But the first thing is making sure that people, the biggest thing that I've found in my numerous years doing this now is that if you do the basics well, most of the stuff happens automatically. And so in terms of keeping deals together, I tend not now to have to do that as much, simply because you're doing the right things very well at the start. So that's things like, for example, when someone's buying a home, very much in terms of, right, let's get this legal paperwork completed, make sure this is accurate, make sure that's accurate. Have you sent your ID? Have you done that? Have you got all your documents in for the conveyances? Have you paid your search fees? Right, let's get all these documents in. So if you can get all that kind of stuff and do the basics well, it's like most things, isn't it? If you do the basics well, most other stuff falls into line. You know, for example, I've related it back to music, as I often do, but you know, playing a musical instrument, there are certain things that are incredibly boring to do, quite labor intensive, but you have to do them, and they're not kind of flashy and wonderful to listen to, and people coming by going, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm practicing my instrument." But you just sounds like you're doing this. Well, yeah, but that's the foundational stuff, because that makes all the other stuff really, really easy. And so I think that kind of getting all that stuff right at the start and ensuring that people know to get that stuff right, then that's the biggest thing. It's like I try and explain it in terms of, right, we're at point A and you want to get to point B. I know the map and I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. If you deviate from this map, you will end up going off a cliff edge. So just please don't. And if you do deviate, I'm just going to stop where we are until you're back on my track. You know, that I think that's the best way. But occasionally you have to get involved with, you know, where there's been maybe valuations have come in under the, you know, what people expected and that type of stuff. And there is a lot of time where you have to kind of, you know, jiggle numbers. So they're all kind of, you know, you can get into the minutiae of where that happens. But I do think most of that can be eliminated by doing the stuff at the beginning.
Completely agree. Charlie, your favorite topic, house prices. You've been very vocal as to where you think the market is heading. Has your view changed in any way, shape or form? Or are you still of the same thinking?
I reconsider and challenge my own views all the time. I'm always looking for changes in factors that affect house prices all the time. And the answer to your question is no, I haven't changed. I'm afraid it's and I know Lewis disagrees with this. I kind of wish I could agree with Lewis, but because I think there's a lot of pain coming, a lot of pain. I think actually you guys probably actually talk to some people who are already experiencing pain at the moment, right? I think there are a lot of people, and it's not public. People keep it inside. It's very private. It's a confidential, personal, financial nightmare that a lot of people are actually going through right now. It's a horrible, horrible situation, especially to people who haven't done anything wrong and have never experienced this before. They don't know. They've just worked hard. They paid the bills, and now suddenly the world has changed and it's blindsided them. It's a horrible situation, and I fear, just this week, Rightmove. This year, Rightmove's been confirming that there's been record numbers of new valuation requests. Zoopla published this week that the highest number of properties for sale for 5 years, 20% up on last year. Christopher Watkin on the stats show this morning saying withdrawals are going up. Mortgage rates are going up, which won't help transaction volumes. I'm afraid, and the trouble is that if I didn't have my background of being in the city and being a qualified derivatives broker, an investment advisor to institutions, I wouldn't have had that. It's like, Lewis, what you just described, just getting the basic knowledge. I had 3 years of what was effectively boot camp of financial markets, understanding global markets. I worked in a brokerage that provided broking services for all global commodities, everything. Currencies, government bonds, soft commodities, gold, foreign exchange, the whole thing. It was like, I learned more in 3 years there when I would have done it 10 years at university. I was actually on the front line doing the trades, doing the deals. And so I came away from it. I left that world. I didn't want to be in it, but I came away from there with an amazing understanding of the relationship between inflation and government bonds and gilts and foreign exchange and commodities and employment and sentiment and all this kind of stuff that I didn't realize that I had actually learnt that. That was just my job. Just was what I was doing every day. And so that's perhaps given me that background, and the fact that I've got a lot of friends who are still in that world. And now, I'm in my early 50s, so I've got a lot of guys who are very senior level in some very big banks and both big high street banks and investment banks. I know that 1 month's data it just doesn't matter what it is, up, down, left, right, it doesn't matter, right? If you want to know what's happening in something as big and important as the housing market, you have to zoom out. You have to zoom out. It doesn't matter whether inquiries were up or down this month, whether instructions are up or down this month. Christopher Watkins' weekly stats show. I mean, oh my God, talk about it's great, but it's analysis paralysis. It's like so much data every single week. But actually, it would be more valuable to zoom out and look at the bigger long-term trends at different parts of the market. So you don't have a housing market. You have a flats market, a terraced houses market, a semis market, and a detached houses market. You've got an urban market,
New build market, yeah.
You've got the high end and the low end, and they're all different. And whatever's happening to the national market is of no relevance to anyone except for the Bank of England and the government dealing with national figures. If you are a mover worrying about moving house, at the moment, and until I launch the Best Agent Public House Price Index, there is no data to tell you what's being agreed, what exchanges are happening. It's why I'm trying to launch this exchange price index. There would be near real-time exchange prices. Until we get that
When's that happening, Charlie?
It depends how fast I can get agents to decide to join in and contribute their exchange prices as they happen. The public wants to do it, but the public can only do it once. Each person can report their transaction once, but I need every single month transactions come in. I'm talking to conveyancers about doing it and agents about doing it. And their first question is, oh, but the clients don't want it published. We're not publishing anyone's address and a price. It's going into an index. And eventually it's public information anyway. So, and it helps everybody. It helps everyone except for the agents who depend on lying about overvaluing a house to win business. They are the only ones who will lose, and good. So if you want to know what's happening to house prices, in as much as it affects your move, you need to be out viewing. There is no other way to form your own informed opinion on what's happening to the properties that affect you, the ones you're selling, the ones you're buying, other than being out there viewing. Because only by doing the viewings can you see what's selling, what's sticking, what agents are telling you. And agents will give you little tidbits and snippets. You know, you'll learn stuff about it. And you've got to be, it's a process at the moment. And until we've got a transparent real-time exchange price index, which will just help everybody, society as a whole, and the data's there. That's the crazy thing, right? The information exists.
Charlie, what do you think the implication is going to be of a change in government that is likely at some point during this year on the generic housing market? I agree with what you're saying at obviously the larger market's part of loads of little markets, but what do you think the implication of the election is going to be, if any?
Right. I think I'm in agreement with most people that the most likely outcome currently the most likely outcome is a Labour government led by Keir Starmer. That's the most likely outcome. If that's what happens, I don't think anything's going to change, because I don't think Labour as a political party and as a government have the execution ability that they need. I think there's a lot of talk and there'll be very little actual action happening. Now, they're no better or worse than the Tories. I mean, they've been disastrous as well, right? This is not a political observation. It's simply a looking at that team, looking at this team. Honestly, I don't see any difference. The other potential outcome from the election, which I find much more interesting, I think it's unlikely, but it's not impossible. Actually, I just listened to Merrin Somerset Webb's podcast on Bloomberg yesterday, and she interviewed someone who is from the world of politics and banking. It's fascinating. She's predicting that Rishi Sunak is going to resign before the election and will not stand as the Prime Minister for the election. That's her prediction. And actually, I listened to and I thought to myself to begin with, well, that would be fun, but I don't think it's going to happen. And by the end, I was like, actually. And this is a woman who was at school with Rishi Sunak. I mean, she really understands how those guys operate and think on the political side and the financial side. And then you've got the very difficult to predict voter outcome in terms of what happens with things like reform. You know, what's Nigel Farage going to do, if anything? I don't know, right? He's keeping his powder very, very dry. Might we end up with a massive protest vote where a surprisingly large number of people don't vote for the Tory or Labour, and we end up with a hung parliament? If we end up with a hung parliament, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think that would be better than either the Tories or Labour getting back in.
Jamie, what do you think? What do you think is going to be the implication of a change in government? Do you think it's going to make any difference in your part of the world?
I think it'll all hang on the policies they come out with and how them. It's not so much even the policies; it's how the markets react off the back of that. So, I'm going to base my decision very much on mortgage pricing, and as we found with trust mini budgets, didn't like that.
Have you read the book, Jamie? Have you read the book? She's got a book out.
No, I haven't read the book, mate. I think Lewis has got it from Waterstones when he saw Gary Stevenson's the other week. So maybe
have a day off. Have a day off.
Did you get a signed copy?
I think a lot's going to happen.
Sorry, Jamie. You got your signed copy?
Yeah. I met him, went to a talk, and had a chat with him. Had a cuddle with him. I actually had a cuddle with him. I did. I mean, I've got there was a photo. I don't think he was very impressed, but
Charlie, are you familiar with the Lewis's loving with Gary Stevenson?
I am, only because I listened to your March podcast when Lewis was saying, I'm going to go and meet him, I'm going to try and get a signed book, and I heard you guys taking the piss out of Lewis about that back then. So that's good. I did hear about that, yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, Jamie.
No worries. So I think a lot's going to hang on just how the market traders interact with the news that comes out of any policies. And if they don't like it, we'll see a swing on swaps, on gilts, Lewis's favorite topic as well, and we could see a repeat. We could quite easily see a repeat. So, I think any government's going to be calculated. They can't overpromise much because they've seen firsthand what what happens in the markets. So probably much the same. I don't think much will happen because of the fear of the economy's too fragile. If you try and go too extreme with something, we'll end up in a deeper hole again. So I think the outcome's the same on the property market.
Well, let's use that to move on to our next topic, which again, we're going to pick Charlie's brains on, and that's about conditional selling. And then we're also going to talk about top tips if people are looking to purchase a property. Lewis, I know you're very passionate about conditional selling or trying to stamp out conditional selling. How do you think we're going to be able to do that if the market picks up?
I don't think we will. I mean, it's my biggest bugbear out of everything in kind of in this job, working within mortgages and property. It's my biggest bugbear, not because I might lose a deal here or there. That it's not for that. It's because of the attitude of forcing someone against their will, essentially blackmailing them, getting them over a barrel, and just having the pants down because you can. And it's essentially bullying. And I'm sure everyone hates bullying, and it just really, really pisses me off, especially because it tends to be on first-time buyers. So it's not bullying in terms of if someone walks in my office now and starts bullying, then of course I'm big and ugly enough to kind of look after myself. But when you're taking someone that is potentially vulnerable to a certain extent, maybe naive, and then using those tactics, it really, really grips me. It drives me up the wall. And honestly, I don't think we're never going to stamp it out unless there's a Chinese wall between estate agency and financial services, which there should be. I think personally, it blows my mind. It's a bit like if no one smoked now, and someone came back from South America and went, I've got this leaf, you can roll it up, dry it out, and smoke it. With the science that we've got now, everyone go, like, get rid of that. We're not having that. It would just instantly be banned. But we obviously people are allowed to do it and all the rest of it. And I think if the property market came into kind of existence now, it would be really obvious to go, you can't have someone that's in financial services working with the person that's selling the asset. That's mental. It just wouldn't happen. And so unless that happens, we're not going to stamp it out because there's no regulatory burden not regulatory burden. There's kind of regulatory burden on us, but no regulatory burden on agents. There's no one that's enforcing this. And until people essentially start being slapped on the wrist with it, for example, what would be a useful foil against this would be, for example, if you get caught in engaging in conditional selling, you're not allowed to list properties on Rightmove for 6 months. There you are. That'd stop it overnight.
Charlie, what do you? I don't think that's ever likely to happen, but how do you think we can address this issue that all the broker chats that we're in, all our colleagues on LinkedIn within this community complain about this topic over and over again? Is it even possible?
Well, if I'm lucky enough to get best agents to the point where it's an important enough source of business from agents, I will do exactly what Liz just suggested. I don't think it'd be 6 months. I think it'd be, if it can be shown that they have defrauded a buyer and or a seller for the benefits of a mortgage commission, they'll be banned. Like, when there's hard evidence of fraudulent behavior from an agent, they'll be off the site.
And that's an exclusive. You heard it here first.
By the way, I mean, my plan is, movers can behave very badly as well. And the whole idea here of this website is to actually make everyone behave a bit better. That will make transactions happen faster. But when it comes to conditional selling, I completely share Lewis's deep fury and frustration with how can a human do that to another human? Like, you've got to hate them, haven't you? Like, you've got to have decided, I hate this person enough that I'm going to stiff them for a large amount of money. Because, whether it's, I didn't even believe this. It was only because of my channel that someone said to me, so an agent actually, no, it was Ash Borland who told me about that some agents will reject cash offers or not put cash offers forward, cash asking price offers on a client's property because they want to sell it to someone that's taking a mortgage. It's like, oh my God, I was left speechless. Like, yeah, okay, I can see that happens. Like, I couldn't believe it. So, and of course, and I heard a story. I think Lewis, you're the one that told the story about the instance of it happening where they sold a property at 15 grand less than they could have.
Just to interrupt you, that's Jamie's story. Actually, that was Jamie's client.
Jamie, what happened?
It was first time buyers mid-COVID, so everything was rather busy, and a rather big national chain of agents was rather forceful with one of my existing clients and saying, like, you need to be perhaps using our advisor to get this property. And to be fair to them, I'd educated them. They stood to their guns and they really did like the property, but they said, no, we're using Jamie. Well, transpired they didn't get the property. 6 months or so goes by, they actually end up buying another property. And much like many young couples now, that when it's a renovation job, they make an Instagram profile of the journey of what they're going through. Other home pages follow other people. And it transpired they come across the person that bought the property they wanted to buy. And they got talking about, what happened. 15 grand difference customer got for the house versus what my client offered. And the only difference was they were happy to go down the route of being forced into using a broker and solicitor. I've seen the correspondence between the two, and they've said they were forceful for us to use it. We begrudgingly did it, but obviously they got the property, and ultimately it's the vendor that's out of pocket now. And yeah, absolutely atrocious.
I mean, literally, that's theft and fraud.
Yeah.
By an agent knowingly, and I will throw myself in any harm's way to get an actual provable case of that publicized. I will gladly, because I don't have investors, I don't have backers. I am more worried about people's livelihoods and the right thing being done and uncovering this kind of conduct, especially when it's from a national chain, the ones that were supposed to trust these big corporations because it's a big corporation, right? I want to flush it out there and let people see this is what happens. You should not use these companies. You should not use companies that allow, they're going to blame it on a bad egg. Bollocks. It's absolute bollocks. It's policy, it's because the targets and everything else. And if we can get an actual case study of it happening, published, I mean, that's all we need. Someone to go on record and to have the hard evidence that it happened. I mean, Jamie.
Some whistleblowers.
Sorry?
Some whistleblowers.
I've now got, I know Lewis has as well, contacts with lots of the, people in the national press. And I would be happy to be the one risking bringing this story to light. Now, they don't have to actually put their names to it, as long as you've got the evidence that proves what happened. So the copies of the offers, that kind of stuff. We could take them to it would do them so much damage. Never mind being prosecuted, it would do their brand so much damage. It would cost them tens of millions in brand damage, and they would have earned it. They would deserve it.
I just find it very surprising if we consider the amount of regulation and red tape that we have to deal with, in terms of arranging part of the transaction, that there's still, and you are right, it does always seem to be the larger chains that keep on saying that this is a training issue, etc., etc. And this isn't a bashing exercise by all means for anyone, because there's some amazing people out there.
Yeah.
And there's the few rotten eggs that do spoil it, and it does seem to be the case that they are the larger corporate players that seem to have a disproportionate number of people that fall into this category. Charlie, what I want to do is I want to take the last few moments of the podcast. This is a very challenging market to get anything moving. And I'd like you, from your personal experience of what you see, to share your top tips of things that people should consider if that they are going to try and either buy their first property or buy a property or move in this current market.
Be better prepared, especially if you're a seller. If you're a seller and you actually want to sell, be contract ready. Go and find a conveyancer, ask them what they mean. If someone says, well, why do you want to do that? You've got the wrong person. You want an agent and a conveyancer who both go, yeah, we're happy to help you get contract ready. As a seller, be contract ready. You will get the buyers faster if you are the one who's ready to do a faster transaction. As a buyer, it's the same. Have your paperwork done. make sure you've got everything to show that when you find the property you want to live in and you put your offer for. I had someone that followed this advice and they were the 9th lowest. So there were 10 offers, 8 offers were higher than theirs. Theirs was the second lowest offer, and they got those accepted because they had conveyancer, full mortgage decision in principle, proper lender mortgage decision in principle, and their property search pack ready to buy. And the sellers chose them. The agent said, but these other guys, no, these guys are serious. They're going to move right now. We want to move right now. So if you want to get moving, these are all things that you will have to do anyway. So it doesn't cost you any extra to be ready before you go out and make your offer.
But Charlie, that's the problem. Sometimes it's people putting their hand in their pocket early that puts a lot of people off. But like you just you hit the nail on the head. It needs to be done anyway. So get it done.
If you're not going to, if you worry about putting your hand in your pocket, you're not serious about moving. Off you go. Come back when you're ready. Do you know, I'll tell you one little anecdote, right? When I was, this was 1996. And I got my girlfriend at the time a job at Foxton's in South Kensington because my best mate was the manager of the branch. So anyway, and she came home one night saying, "Oh, I don't like this job. They're all mean and it's mean and you can make a lot of money." I said, "Well, make a decision. I'll either join in and make the money or leave." And she started to stay. And then she came home and said, "Every day, the phones ringing, go off the hook. People walking off. This is before the internet, right? So people going off the street." Phones ringing off the hook, and then there are too many. And I said, well, if I were you, what I would do is when someone walks in off the street, be the first one to stand up and greet them. And if they are ready, they're your buyer. If they're not, introduce them to one of your colleagues. Same with the phone. The phone rings, answer it first. If they're ready, they're your buyer. If not, just hand them off. 3 months later, she broke the Foxton's record into 21 exchanges in 1 month. Just by following that. Do not spend time with people who aren't ready. It's a completely waste. You don't want to send them away, but actually, I think people actually appreciate quite a frank bit of feedback. I'm sorry, I don't think you're actually ready to move house yet. When you are, I'd love to help you, but you need to have this, this, and this first. I can help you with that, but if you're not ready, you're not ready. Let them waste someone else's time. So that's my advice, not only to buyers and sellers, but to brokers and agents as well. Tell people politely and professionally, but tell them, say, it doesn't feel like you're ready yet. You're not ready. I deal with people who are ready.
Completely agree. Now, Charlie, just finishing off, we always finish our sections with a few comments about growing your business. We all run our own financial services business, and you mentioned this at the beginning of today's podcast about your experience of growing an audience. A lot of us, are doing a lot of stuff on social media, trying to get content out of there. What would be your advice for somebody in our positions who's looking to grow their audience and, get their message out to more people using social media?
If you're not enjoying the content you're making, it won't be enjoyable to watch. Have fun. Have a laugh, have people on to chat about stuff. Don't worry about looking professional. This isn't business to business stuff, it's business to consumer. Just because if you enjoy it, you'll do more of it. And if you enjoy it, your audience will enjoy it. If your audience enjoys it, more people will follow you. If it's all very wooden and technical and you're talking about interest rates and this kind of stuff, oh God, it's another one doing the same old thing. And don't do what everyone else is doing. Do anything different. But honestly, it's really, really hard work, even when you enjoy it, right? Social media publishing is really draining, emotionally draining. It is so tiring. And so if you're not enjoying it, your content's just not going to be enjoyable to watch. So just find a way to make it fun and put a bit of, people call me a doom monger. I maybe, but I'm a cheerful one.
Lewis, we never take things seriously, do we?
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, in fact, Jamie. We don't. I mean, Jamie put out a really kind of professionally made social media post. Was it today, Jamie, or was it yesterday? about